all art is political. Okay, maybe not all art, but stay with me here. We are all human, and we create art influenced by the society we live in and what we want it to be. Art has historically been utilized to convey the perspectives of an artist and influence public opinion. Even when it is not made with the intention of either goal, it can always be interpreted as such. The more complex a piece of art is, the more potential it has to have politics. This might not be political because of its simplicity, but a piece of media with a large scale struggles to avoid politics. Politics are very important to me, always have been. Not only are they just fascinating, but it's also important how they are portrayed in the media. We need to analyze what the media we consume says because its messaging is important. It can shape us as people and as a culture. Splatoon, as a series, has an expansive story that mirrors real-life events, critiques modern issues, and tries to impart its morals onto the player. This can be seen in all of its story modes and even in outside material. In this video, I'm going to explain the politics of Splatoon in depth, why it is political, and how that is important for us in the real world. Before we get into it, let's first get a clear definition of politics out of the way, as a lot of people have a very skewed view of what the word means. After looking at the definitions provided by Wikipedia, Merriam-Webster, and Britannica, here's how I'm going to define the term. Politics is the art and science of influencing groups of people and managing relations with other groups. In short, politics is the struggle for power. Your politics are how you believe society should be run and how you would deal with contemporary issues. It's a much broader topic than just elections and voting. It is inescapable. They are why you live the life you do now. An artist's politics seep into their art because it is nigh impossible to leave all biases out of a piece or of the circumstances of its creation. Even if it doesn't directly state their beliefs out loud, you can still tell by how it handles certain topics. So, when I talk about politics in this video, I'm not just talking about modern politics, political parties, or any specific political figure. I am talking about sociopolitics, economic politics, and the like. Now we've established what politics are. I've got one last thing to mention before I get into how Splatoon is political. I would like to thank the Splatoon community on Twitter for sharing their opinions on this with me. I got a lot more interaction than I could have hoped for, and a few of the commenters pointed out things I would have never mentioned in this video if not for them. Thank you. With that out of the way, let's dive in. The best topic to open with would have to be the issue of climate change, since that is the catalyst of the lore. Splatoon 1 Sunken Scroll number 25 reads, "Though academic circles warn of rising sea levels, the policymakers pay them no heed. At this rate, human civilization may be lost beneath the tide. Will even this furry fellow be consumed by the raging ocean?" Does this sound familiar to you? It should. In the real world, we also have increasing temperatures, melting ice sheets, and sea levels going up steadily. One of the official art books even says it by name, global warming. This is eerily realistic, as real-world countries refuse to pass eco-friendly legislation. In 2021, the UK attempted to get countries to pledge to phase out coal. The three largest coal consumers, China, Australia, and India, refused to sign. The elites would have lost money from this, and therefore they would have lost influence and power. This isn't to say that we haven't made any progress on fighting climate change, as 46 countries agreed to the deal, and even though China itself didn't, they still announced that they would end overseas coal financing. The existence of international agreements regarding this subject means it's heavily political, and the fact that the series so heavily criticizes its existence is telling of the writers. As for the era of turflings, there was the Great Turf War around 100 years ago, a conflict spurred by rising sea levels. Inklings and Octolings fought over the remaining territory. The losers, the Octolings, were forced to live underground. This was one of the most crucial pieces of lore in the series. The first game even has 5 scrolls dedicated to explaining the event. Still on the fence about Splatoon being political? Let's dive deeper. What I've just described to you is geopolitics, the politics of how geography affects foreign policy. The Great Turf War started because of the desire of both sides to gain more land. This mirrors real-life conflicts. For example, the American Plains Wars. American settlers were venturing farther west into native territory. This caused a series of wars, and the natives ended up being forced into reservations. I'm not saying these events directly inspired the lore of Splatoon, though, but I bring them up as a point of comparison. To quote one of my favorite YouTubers, it doesn't get more political than geopolitics. And, to that end, there is nothing more political than war. Relations between these two species of turflings also reflect real-world race relations. Although racial tensions have lessened by the time of the series' debut, and the only proponents of racism are a war veteran and his granddaughter, we can still draw parallels. Take a look at the chat logs from Octo Expansion, Splatoon 2's DLC. Captain Cuttlefish uses microaggressions against Marina, such as saying she's okay for an Octo. Additionally, in the first two main campaigns, he and Marie referred to the Octarians with words like Octo-Jerk and Octo-Slob. They insulted Octarians with their species specifically in mind. This behavior is criticized by, surprisingly, Tartar, who had this to say about the Great Turf War: "You wage war over minor genetic deviations." Does that remind you of anything, viewer? Now that I've mentioned him, I would be remiss to not talk about how Tartar's motivations may be one of the most political aspects of the series. After failing to blend Agenate, he recites the dialogue I mentioned earlier, and then goes on to say, "You obsess over trivial fashion choices, and so I created a new prime directive: destroy this world and start anew. From the best and brightest test subjects, I created a sludge of supreme DNA, a primordial ooze from which the ultimate life form will emerge." Tartar's goal is to commit a genocide against the inferior species and create a new and improved one, quote-unquote, worthy of human intelligence. His plan to achieve that is to use eugenics. Eugenics is the, now debunked, theory that traits such as intelligence and behavior could be inherited and human beings could be improved with selective breeding. Tartar believes that Inklings and Octolings are how they are because of their genetics, not their flawed culture. And if he can collect the most competent subjects, he can cultivate a new, more intelligent species. Even the mention of supreme DNA in of itself is enough to make a case on Tartar being a eugenicist, as the belief that some DNA is good and some bad is one held by eugenicists. Now, I'm aware that this dialogue is exclusive to the English releases. The English translation has been criticized for diverging from the original Japanese version. The Japanese version focuses more on Tartar's critique of Inkling culture, and Tartar does not mention genetics in it. But the English translation is still an official piece of lore. Nintendo gave the okay on this being in the games, so it's only fair that I treat it with the same weight that I do for all other dialogue. Even if I didn't, there's still plenty of other topics without this issue. Let's move on to one that exists in all localizations of the game. Now, LGBT+ characters and themes shouldn't be considered political, in my humble opinion, but their right to exist is debated in many parts of the world. Even so, that didn't stop the developers from including queer themes. Pearl and Marina's relationship is very obviously romantic. They're implied to live together in side order. There's a canon comic made by the game director that is literally a love confession from Marina, and just look at the side order dialogue. This is called queer coding, the attribution of stereotypically queer traits to fictional characters without explicitly stating their gender and sexual identity. Same goes for Oct with their gender. Nintendo hasn't made a June Pride post going Oct is non-binary, but they have referred to them with exclusively they-them pronouns since side order. In Japanese, they refer to themselves with the boku pronoun, which is often used for gender-ambiguous characters in Japanese fiction. It is a masculine pronoun that can be used by boys and girls, and it doesn't have an exact equivalent in English, though they-them is considered to be close enough. One notable character that uses these pronouns is Krona from Soul Eater. Also Farina from Genshin Impact, Sailor Uranus from Sailor Moon, and Desmond from Carol and Tuesday. There are also other characters that are non-binary, such as Orion from Chirpy Chips, Cypher, and debatably the Agents. Orion and 3 use they-them pronouns, while Cypher uses its. It's also important to note that the characters who are LGBT coded are depicted just as all of the other characters are. Their status as queer does not make them subject to suffering, ridicule, or scrutiny. The developer's intention is clear here, and gender politics are another hot-button subject in real life. I'm sure my Western viewers know that all too well. On that note, the way diversity is presented is also political. Characters from all different kinds of cultural backgrounds are shown coexisting and even creating art together. This theme began in Splatoon 2 with the introduction of Off the Hook, an interracial duo consisting of a Japanese woman and a black woman. Pearl heavily embraces African American culture, as can be seen with how she dresses in Octo Expansion, her style of singing, and even down to her name. In Japanese, her name is Hime Hozuki. Her last name comes from the Japanese name for colossal squid, Daio Hozuki Ika. Her first name is from the northern pygmy squid's Japanese name, Hime Ika. Put it together and her name means pygmy colossal. And, since in Japanese the last name comes first, her name means colossal pygmy. This is a reference to the late rapper Biggie Smalls, and so was her outfit. She sports a large crown, an oversized chain, and an oversized sweater. This resembles Biggie's iconic The New York King album cover. It is refreshing to see a team of Japanese game designers take inspiration from another culture and to implement that by making a character who embraces it so heavily. But Off the Hook doesn't just embrace African American culture. For example, in the artwork for the Red Bean Paste Splatfest, Subuang vs. Koshian, both Pearl and Marina are depicted wearing kimonos. Then, for the Salsa vs. Guacamole Splatfest, Pearl and Marina are wearing chiapaneca dresses. The developers doubled down on the cultural appreciation themes with Deep Cut. One member is Japanese, one Indian, another is Brazilian. Shiver proudly wears her sarashi and is often holding her fan. Fry's main design has harem pants, but her Splatoween outfit specifically has her adorned with gold reminiscent of Indian wedding jewelry. Big Man's design has the least cultural elements, but Brazilian Splatoon fans have said that his hat closely resembles the Cangaceiro hat. You can also hear the cultural influences in all of their songs. Deep Cut's music has a variety of instruments such as the sitar, whistles, and flutes. Not only that, but their styles of singing have cultural influences. Most notably is Shiver's kakegoi, which can be heard during live performances. I'll play some instances of it for you now. The entirety of Splatsville is a cultural melting pot, even referenced in Splatoon 3's Sunken Scroll Floor, with inklings, octolings, jellies, and other species residing in it. This is an exaggerated depiction of multiculturalism, a political philosophy. Multiculturalism states that multiple cultures should be appreciated in a society without any one culture being dominant. This directly opposes nationalism, the belief of the superiority of one's own state. That ideology is heavily associated with xenophobia and anti-immigrant rhetoric. Splatoon was created in Japan, which is a country known for its cultural homogeneity and strong feelings of xenophobia among its people. The Splatoon series works to go against the grain by representing Indian, Hispanic, and African American culture with the same respect as Japanese culture. This willingness on the developers' end to research and appreciate different cultures while also inviting others to embrace theirs is commendable. Not only that, but I like the approach they took to including diverse characters. Nowadays, diversity is considered trendy, and a lot of inclusion of characters feels very performative, as if they are only there so the company can pull them out when it's time for the yearly Pride post. But the Splatoon devs took a more subtle approach, choosing to have a wide range of identities and ethnicities without explicitly pointing out each one. They are characters with these identities, but that is not the focus of their character. If we want to look at a subject even closer to Japan, just look at Grizzco. One of Japan's biggest issues is its unhealthy work culture. Grizzco is heavily based on Japanese black companies, which are known for their shady business practices. They hire very young employees while forcing them to work illegal overtime and even without compensation. Even the capsule reward system is inspired by them. In Japan, gambling is illegal, but pachinko parlors barely skate around this by offering prizes other than cash. These prizes come in plastic balls. You can receive these from playing Salmon Run. Though in-game currency is also a potential prize, it is not a guarantee, meaning the employees of Grizzco aren't working for consistent pay. This goes to show how comically shady Grizzco is, hiring teenagers and not promising them money in return. In the 2010s, after a rise in work-related deaths, the Japanese government began looking into how to put a stop to black companies, and around the time of Splatoon 2's release, meaning when Grizzco was introduced, there were government-run investigations and laws passed in order to reach this goal. A study released in 2023 shows that almost 40% of Japanese people have worked for or are working for a black company. Because of this statistic, it is not unreasonable to say that Grizzco may have been grounded in the experiences of former black company employees. Although it is far from being controversial, a statement against black companies is still a political one. It aligns with the Japanese government's actions. Though politics are more than literal laws, regulations, and political figures, Splatoon still has all of these things. Most of these are only seen in Sunken Scrolls, but are still definitely there. The domes have a Department of Energy. We get to see a little newspaper clipping featuring a member in Splatoon 1's 6th Sunken Scroll. In the second game, the in-universe reason for why the special weapons were altered is the quote-unquote powers that be placing restrictions on turf weapons. We don't get to know the specifics of the new guidelines, but we do know that none of Splatoon 1's specials made the cut. Also, I might as well note that Splatfests are political in universe. In Splatoon 2's post-fest dialogue, Marina mentions at least twice that whichever option wins is better by law. First in the cake vs ice cream Splatfest, and later in chicken vs egg. So technically, whichever team a character picks could be considered political. If you chose a certain team and won, then congrats, you've technically influenced the laws and lore. This is just a goofy point though, so I digress. The last thing I want to address is the way consumerism is represented. Consumerism is a socio-economic system that encourages purchasing goods and services with the promise of the individual gaining fulfillment and well-being. In economic terms, this fulfillment and happiness is called utility. It is materialism as politics, with both ideologies stating that material gain will bring joy to the people. The first mention of it is in Splatoon 1's 11th scroll. It reads, "Twice a year, the Inkopolis Collection fashion show captures the hearts, minds, and wallets of the city's youth. Is there no room in these creatures' minds for anything but battle and fashion?" Then, in the 18th scroll, there's a colorful advertisement showing off a sale and insisting that you must buy their clothes to be fresh. In the sequel, the 12th scroll comments, "Are these so-called twinklings trying to convince their peers that their lives are exciting and full of meaning, or are they trying to convince themselves?" Attached to the page are pictures of quote-unquote twinklings showing off their food and clothes in an aesthetic way. This society closely mirrors our own, with a heavy emphasis on fashion, social media, and spending money as a means to fulfillment. This kind of society is driven by capitalism. Businesses convince people to buy trendy clothes and food with promises that it will make them popular, make them feel good. But it's shallow. And as that last scroll touched on, it will not truly make your life meaningful. The citizens of Inkopolis are not just criticized by the scrolls, but also Tartar, if you remember, who cited, "You obsess over trivial fashion choices," as a reason for his hate of turfling. Though the series may raise an eyebrow at these matters, it does not go deep into them at all. For one, related to the last topic, you're more than often not encouraged to engage in these practices. There are so many things to spend money on in Splatoon 3. Clothes, accessories, toys and food, gambling. You're never supposed to really question if this kind of society is good or not. You're not giving consistent evidence that turflings are feeling unfulfilled en masse. All you see are smiles from them. Secondly, Grizzco and its status as a black company could have been explored in a more interesting way. They hire kids and make them work a dangerous job, but that isn't taken seriously. They're still endorsed by Off the Hook and Deep Cut, and you aren't supposed to question that. There also isn't any content regarding the company negatively impacting its employees. There are no characters that have had their lives changed for the worse just by working for the company. This isn't to say that I expected or wanted the developers to take extra inspiration from Japan and introduce something like Karoshi into the game, nor does it mean I want Shiver to turn to the screen in the middle of the Anarchy Splatcast and give a monologue about capitalism and the dangers of the working world. My problem is that these topics are established and subsequently ignored. An interesting problem is set up and is left to rot as another inconsequential lore tidbit. It doesn't make sense and is extremely unsatisfying if you care about the lore like a lot of fans do. There is a way to delve into these topics in an age-appropriate and engaging way. For the issue of capitalism, I would first exaggerate it even more in universe. For the next hub area, give us more advertising screens like there are in the Deca Tower and in Splatoon 3's lobby. Show the NPCs in the hub looking at magazines, shopping on their phones, holding shopping bags, etc. Don't just tell the player that the Splatoon world runs on consumerism. Show them. Then have the main characters comment on it. Let them show concern for how many kids are centering their lives around trends and shopping halls. That would not only scratch the itch of wanting this lore point to be followed up on, but also allows for a good moral lesson. Buying things can be fun, but it shouldn't be too important to you. You need more in your life. To expand on Grizzco and its malpractice, I would do something similar. Show the employees lurking around looking exhausted, unhappy, even covered in salmonid ink. And let the idols be skeptical of Grizzco even after Mr. Grizz's defeat. After looking at all these examples, it should be obvious that Splatoon has political elements. And yet, I've seen people say Splatoon isn't political, dismissing it by saying it's just a game. That's not a healthy way to look at the media you consume. There's no shame in not wanting to hyperanalyze everything. You are allowed to engage with your media however you want to. The problem comes when you deny that there could be any depth to said media. That is anti-intellectual and ignorant. There's complexity in any story if you're willing to look for it. If you don't want to look at it, then fine. But if your response to somebody saying a piece of media might have depth is, "Shut up, no it doesn't," then you shouldn't be trying to engage in analysis of the series. It's not only anti-intellectual, but also boring. It's not adding anything meaningful to the conversation. In fact, it attempts to shut it down. Splatoon tells a story. It doesn't matter whether the media it uses is a video game, a novel, or even an illustration. It could be a play performed on ice for all I care. It's still a piece of art. It can be analyzed and interpreted. Its presentation doesn't automatically mean it cannot have a message, nor does it being made by Nintendo have an impact on this message. So yes, Splatoon is political. It may not represent all of these ideas perfectly, but it is political. The series started out with themes of global warming and racism, then in later entries expanded on them and introduced themes of multiculturalism and queerness with support for the latter. I think one of the reasons many people still don't think the series is political is how, to younger people, politics can feel restricted to voter ballots during election cycles. They perceive politics as something restrained to certain people and certain places. If something doesn't mention political parties or figures, it is not political according to their understanding. People don't realize that politics are a very, very broad topic. It covers anything related to the government and people's struggle for power. You live in a world of politics. There is no way around that. All art is created in our politicized world, and even attempting to be apolitical is a political statement in of itself. Regardless of what the developers were thinking during the writing of the games, they still have political opinions which bleed into the work. But was that their intention? Did they mean to be so political, so progressive, on purpose? I think so. We live in a time where climate change is an issue worldwide, where there's so much hostility towards one another, where the working class is exploited by all sides. There have even been recent controversies over activists destroying art in the name of the environment. In Splatoon, we see these problems as well. I believe the series aims to subtly educate its players and show them what the world should be more like. The message is that we should embrace our differences and live in peace together, as sappy as that sounds. Splatoon's target audience is kids and teenagers. They are the most easily influenced individuals as they aren't already set in their beliefs. If you show someone subjects like queerness in a positive light when they're young, they're more likely to accept that as normal later on. Kids media has been preaching values like be kind to everyone and treat the environment nicely for decades now. Take a look at shows like Captain Planet and Octonauts, for example. So, the developers likely gave the games themes of unity, peace, and protecting our environment to hopefully inspire newer generations to share those beliefs. To show our children that no matter how different we are, we should all be at peace with one another. We should allow people to be unique and embrace them for it. We've established what Splatoon supports: diversity, love, etc. These messages are very progressive. Specifically, their depictions of queerness and multiculturalism could be considered social liberal. That ideology promotes equality and diversity. It falls somewhere in the center-left on the political spectrum. Whereas its opposite, social conservatism, is less keen on diversity and has very traditional views regarding relations and sexuality. Social conservatives lean more into monoculture, which you do not see present in Splatoon. Right-winged people also have a history of taking global warming less seriously than the left does. Just look at how they treated Al Gore way back when. They are less likely to support sources of renewable energy like wind and solar power as opposed to the left. This aversion towards clean power exacerbates global warming. One of Splatoon's main criticisms towards humanity is how we destroy our own environment. Therefore, it criticizes unsustainable practices, such as our gratuitous use of fossil fuels. Leftists have been more likely to try combating climate change, especially when it comes to legislature. Lastly, if Splatoon criticizes black companies, then it's safe to assume they want more regulations for businesses in place to stop their abuses. Republicans and libertarians especially loathe the idea of heavy government regulation when it comes to business. Wanting the government to regulate companies is an idea held by authoritarians with the goal of protecting the working class. So, to recap, Splatoon takes a more left approach to multiple subjects and is blatantly progressive in its politics. And those politics seep into its fandom. I've already established that the game itself is political, but others believe that it is solely the fandom that is. They have stated that the only politics in the game come in the form of the user-made posts seen in the hub. When asked, people reported that they'd seen in-game posts about MAGA, Palestine, Christianity, and the LGBT, heavy on that last one. Speaking from experience, I can't boot up the game a single time without seeing something related about politics or the gays. If you boot up the game right now, you'll likely have a similar experience. Outside of the game, on spaces such as Twitter and Discord, progressive Splatoon fans flourish. We've all seen how much Perlina fan art is out there. On top of that, there is a high acceptance for the disabled, neurodivergent, and more. There are so many autistic Splatoon fans that neurotypicals feel like the minority, to the point where another user has even made a video on that specific subject. So why is Splatoon's fandom like this? All of Splatoon's messages and the way they're handled are why the fandom tends to be this way. Progressives are drawn to games with progressive ideals. Not only that, but a diverse range of people are attracted to the media that represents them. That's why we see so many queer people playing Splatoon. They get attached to the LGBT characters. Not only that, but young people who play the games may internalize its message, and that is a good thing. For one, I love to see that the fandom can be a safe space for queer individuals to be themselves and meet more people like them. That is so awesome. With the way the world is now, especially, it is crucial to be able to find spaces that accept you. There are so many posts spreading positivity for the LGBT movement. I've seen tons of Splatoon-related posts for Pride Month, but they're also prevalent year-round. It's such a notable aspect of the community that it's a running joke to say the entire fandom is gay. Alongside that, I've seen various Splatoon-themed charity events regarding environmental and humanitarian issues. I've seen at least 3 Splatoon-themed fundraisers for Palestine and for marine conservation. A lot of these were fanzines. For those of you who don't know, fanzines are art collections and they can be bought physically or digitally, or free, such as the Eel Deal and Ink Pop signs, which both donated proceeds to Palestinian relief efforts. There's also the Tidal Rush sign, which donated all profits to Gray's Reef National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, and similarly, the Asian 24 sign, which funded the Kuleana Coral Restoration Project. There have also been charity streams, such as the ones by Negus and Nebulae. One user, Fernshaw Art, even sold character designs to raise money for Care for Gaza. By far the most impressive charity events among them were Squids for Kids, a series of 10 streams by the Bald Gamer. Squids for Kids has raised a staggering $35,140.09. All of this went to the Extra Life charity, which donates to children's hospitals in America and Canada. All of this is great. I love how the Splatoon community can get people to volunteer for a good cause. That means the Splatoon fandom has done real, measurable good. Not only that, but in December 2023, when Splatter Color Screen was released, there was an influx of support for players who claimed this special was an accessibility issue. Players with disabilities such as tinnitus, autism, visual snow, and colorblindness expressed varying levels of distress caused by the sudden visual and audio changes. The community was vocal about these criticisms to the point where Splatter Color Screen was being considered for a ban in competitive play. One case is the Sendo.inc website, which allows for players to select a setting that opts them out of matches where weapons using Splatter Color Screen are present. Because of complaints by the fandom, Nintendo did adjust Splatter Color Screen, but many people have still said that their changes were not enough and the special should have been completely reworked or scrapped altogether. I do have some criticisms of the fandom though, as all should. I do think the fans give Nintendo a little bit too much credit for what Splatoon does in some areas, specifically for its portrayal of the LGBT. The discerning viewer knows what queer coding is and can spot it easily, but the downside of coding is that it is the lazy way to write queer characters. It is non-committal. They don't ever let the characters state their identity, nor do they explicitly do so on social media. This is because they don't want to alienate homophobic gamers. Businesses aim to maximize profit after all. They want to have LGBT portrayal without having their sales impacted or outright halted in certain countries. For example, Russia and China censor LGBT media, but also we in the West have growing homophobic sentiment. Because of this, I wouldn't say Perlina nor Oct are outstanding LGBT representation. Queer characters should be allowed to be open about their identity, and to hide it or leave any ambiguity is not doing them justice. I want to see hard, undeniable proof that Pearl and Marina are in a relationship. Not hints, even if they are very, very strong hints. But would I go as far to say Nintendo is queerbaiting? No. It's alright representation, just nothing groundbreaking. I believe the writers sincerely wanted to include queer characters, but they were restricted by Nintendo. They are a business after all, and this type of behavior is not unheard of from them. Look at how Cartoon Network treated Steven Universe. It's difficult to get LGBT representation into any media, let alone media made for kids. Even if the representation isn't perfect, it's still there, and anyone who fails to read certain characters as queer-coded is dense at best and homophobic at worst. The Splatoon fandom isn't perfect. No fandom is. I would be remiss not to point out its many flaws. Besides many people in it having bad takes on lore, there are also plenty of toxic people in it. I've personally seen people upset at the amount of ableism in the community. The most damning case of this, besides the Splatter Color Screen incident, came in the gyro vs sticks debate. People have complained that they received harassment over preferring to use sticks over motion controls. Sometimes this is just personal preference, but oftentimes it is because of visual issues caused by how jittery the screen can look with gyro controls enabled. Splatoon's fandom has an okay reputation depending on who you ask. Though it excels in certain areas, we should be encouraging those in the fandom to be even more accepting and accommodating. it's what the message of the games is after all. Splatoon, whether you agree with it or not, has political themes. Ever since the first game, we've seen mentions of global warming, geopolitics, war, queerness, capitalism, etc. Though many of these subjects are not explained in detail, they were still intentionally written in the lore. When playing each story mode, there's some takeaway to be had, and I think more people should pay attention to that. Some of you could learn a lot from it. I hope this video doesn't come off as too pretentious. Thank you for watching. Special thanks to everyone involved. Like, really. Especially to my editor, Paul, who read over the whole script multiple times and was extremely helpful in making this video as good as it is. And this was 13 pages. I'm also sorry for how long it took for this video to come out, but to make up for that, I'd like to tease my next video. Enjoy!